I matched with my perfect guy at 1:37 a.m. on a Tuesday, and by 1:38 I was already convinced the universe had finally decided to stop messing with me. His name was Jay. No face pic, just a photo of his hands holding a coffee mug, sleeves pushed up, veins visible in that subtle, unfair way that makes your brain short-circuit. His bio was simple: into early morning runs, bad horror movies, and pretending I don't care when I actually care too much. I remember laughing quietly in my dark bedroom. That line hit too close. I'd spent most of my life pretending I didn't care. I swiped right mostly because I was bored. But when it matched instantly, I actually sat up in bed. His first message? Brooks, I was hoping we'd match. I stared at my screen. How the hell was he hoping? He didn't even know me. Do we know each other? I typed back. There was a pause. Then, maybe, maybe not. But I've definitely noticed you. That should have been my first clue. Instead, I felt flattered. At that point in my life, I'd been on every dating app known to man. After 3 years of half-relationships and situationships that never went anywhere, I was tired. I'm not dramatic about love, but I wanted something real. Someone steady. Someone who didn't treat me like a secret or a phase. And this guy? He felt different immediately. We talked for hours that first night. About work. About how much we both hated networking events. About how neither of us liked loud clubs but always ended up there because of friends. He said he worked in marketing. Lived nearby. Same neighborhood, actually. That part caught my attention. What coffee place do you go to? I asked. He answered correctly. The tiny one on Maple with the barista who always looks vaguely annoyed. Coincidence, I thought. Still, something about the way he texted felt familiar. Like the rhythm of his sentences was something I'd heard before. Short replies. Dry humor. Slight sarcasm but soft underneath. At one point he wrote, "You're less intimidating online." I blinked at that. Intimidating? I replied. Yeah. In person you've got that don't talk to me face. I laughed out loud in my empty apartment. I'd heard that before. I worked in a shared office space downtown. A few startups, freelancers, small teams all in one open floor. I kept to myself. Headphones in. Focused. Polite but not chatty. I'd always assumed no one paid attention to me beyond the occasional hey, but apparently someone had. We talked every day after that. Morning texts, midday check-ins, random memes, late-night voice notes. His voice. That's when the familiarity really started creeping in. It was low, calm, slightly raspy like he didn't drink enough water. When he laughed, it was quick and sharp like he tried to hold it back but couldn't. I'd heard that laugh before. I just couldn't place it. Send me a pic, I finally said on day 4. He dodged it. Soon. Are you secretly a catfish? No. I just want you to like me before you see me. That should have annoyed me. Probably would have if I wasn't already invested. Instead, it intrigued me. He'd describe himself sometimes, though. Dark hair. Broader than he looks. People assume I'm more confident than I actually am. He said he'd seen me around, but I probably never noticed him. That stung a little. I hate the idea that I might have ignored someone who felt invisible. Where have you seen me? I asked one night. Long pause. Work. Coffee. Around. Around. That word stuck with me. By week 2 I was hooked. We hadn't met yet, but it didn't feel like we hadn't met. It felt like we were building something quietly, privately. He'd ask real questions, not just surface stuff. He remembered things, like how I hate olives but always forget to say no olives, or that I get weirdly competitive about board games. No one paid attention like that. One night, we were texting while I was still at the office finishing up a project. It was late, almost 8 p.m. Most people had already left. Look up, he sent. I frowned. What? Just look up. I slowly lifted my head. Across the room, near the glass-walled meeting rooms, someone was standing by the printer. My stomach dropped. Jose. He was facing the other direction, focused on stacking papers. Dark hair, fitted button down, sleeves rolled up. Same veins, same build, same laugh. My brain scrambled to connect it. Jose worked 2 desks down from me. We'd been sharing that office space for almost 2 years, and I had barely spoken to him beyond, "Hey, and can you pass the charger?" My phone buzzed again. "See you." My pulse hammered. I stared at him. At Jose, the guy I'd mentally categorized as quiet marketing guy who keeps to himself. He suddenly turned slightly, like he felt it. Our eyes almost met. My phone buzzed again. "You never really looked at me before, Brooks." I couldn't breathe for a second. I looked down at my screen, then back up at him. He slipped his phone into his pocket. And that's when I realized. My perfect match. The guy who knew my coffee order. My laugh. My don't talk to me face. The guy I'd been opening up to every night. Was the one person I'd ignored in real life for years. And he knew it. My phone buzzed one more time. "So, do you still want that first date?" I swallowed hard. Because suddenly, this wasn't some mysterious stranger anymore. It was Jose, the guy I'd never given a real chance to, and I had no idea whether I felt exposed or excited. I didn't answer right away. I just stood there in the middle of the office, phone in my hand, staring at Jose like I was seeing him for the first time. Because I was not the guy 2 desks down. Not the quiet marketing analyst who always brought his own lunch and wore the same 3 neutral-colored sweaters on rotation. But the guy who stayed up until 2 a.m. asking me about my childhood. The guy who remembered I hated olives. The guy who said I was intimidating in person. My phone buzzed again. "You look like you're buffering." I blinked. Slowly, I typed back. "So this whole time?" Across the room, he glanced down at his phone. Then, "Yeah." I felt heat crawl up my neck. "You couldn't have told me?" He read it. Took a second. Then his shoulders rose slightly with a quiet sigh before he typed. "Would you have given me a chance if I had?" That hit harder than I expected. Because the honest answer? Probably not. Not because he wasn't attractive. He was. I just never looked long enough to register it. Jose had always been in my peripheral vision. Safe. Background. Familiar. I was used to chasing mystery, newness, the thrill of not knowing. Jose had been right there the whole time, and I'd never leaned in. I grabbed my bag and walked toward him before I could overthink it. Each step felt heavier. He looked up as I approached. Not smug. Not smug at all. If anything, he looked nervous, like he was bracing for impact. Up close like this, I noticed things I'd somehow missed for 2 years. The faint scar on his chin. The way his eyes weren't just dark. They had these lighter brown flecks when the light hit them. His hands were slightly ink-stained, probably from that stupid printer he was always fighting with. "You catfished me," I said quietly. He huffed a soft laugh. "Technically, I never lied. You definitely withheld." "Yeah," he admitted. There was no defensiveness. No games. Just honesty. "I didn't think you'd swipe right on Jose from the office," he added. My stomach tightened. "You don't know that." He gave me a look. "Brooks, please." And that's when I felt it, that uncomfortable awareness that maybe he did know. I had a type. Everyone did. And Jose didn't exactly scream center of attention. He was more steady, grounded. The kind of guy you'd overlook if you were scanning the room for the loudest laugh or the sharpest jawline. But standing this close, he was solid, warm, real. "You've been watching me for 2 years?" I asked. He rubbed the back of his neck. Not in a creepy way. "Aha. He hesitated. "You always seemed closed off. Headphones in. You'd smile politely, but it never felt like an invitation." That stung again. "I wasn't trying to be unapproachable." "I know that now," he said softly. "But back then, I figured if I walked up and asked you out, you'd say no before I even finished the sentence." Silence stretched between us. The office felt too bright, too exposed. "So you made a fake identity," I said. He winced. "Not fake. Just anonymous. And you wanted me to fall for you without knowing it was you." His eyes met mine. "I wanted you to see me. That did it." That was the moment something shifted in my chest. Because this wasn't some ego play. He hadn't done it to trick me or win something. He'd done it because he thought he didn't stand a chance as himself. And I hated that I might have made him feel that way. Why now? I asked. He exhaled slowly. Because you were about to delete the app. My eyebrows shot up. You knew that. You said you were tired of surface-level stuff. That you wanted something real. His voice lowered slightly. I've wanted something real with you for a while. God, no one had ever said that to me without a layer of sarcasm or casualness wrapped around it. Just direct. I was going to tell you this weekend, he added. I didn't plan for the dramatic look-up moment. It just happened. I laughed despite myself. Of course it did. We stood there, awkward and charged, in the middle of our shared workspace like two idiots who just realized we'd been orbiting each other for years. So, he said carefully, do you still want that first date? I studied him, not through a screen, not through curated texts and voice notes, but right here, Jose, the guy who always cleaned the coffee machine when no one asked, the guy who stayed late but never complained, the guy who apparently noticed me more than anyone else had. Are you still nervous? I asked. He blinked. About what? About me saying no. His jaw flexed slightly. Yeah, he admitted. That honesty again. It disarmed me completely. I took a step closer. Close enough to lower my voice so no one else in the empty office could hear. You know what's funny? I said. What? If you'd asked me out 2 years ago, I probably would have said no. He nodded once like he expected that. But if you ask me right now? He held my gaze. Yeah, he said quietly. My heart was pounding harder than it should have been. Ask me again. His lips twitched, just barely. Brooks, he said. Voice steady but softer than I'd ever heard it in person. Will you go on a real date with me? No screens. No aliases. No mystery. Just him. I didn't hesitate. Yes. And the way his shoulders dropped in relief, that's when I realized something that made my chest feel tight in the best way. I hadn't just found my perfect match on an app. I'd finally noticed the one who'd been right in front of me all along. I wish I could say I walked out of that office calm and collected. I didn't. I barely made it to the elevator before my brain started spiraling. I had just agreed to go on a date with the guy I'd unknowingly been flirting with for 2 weeks, who also happened to sit 2 desks away from me, who I'd ignored for 2 years. No pressure. The elevator doors slid shut and I finally looked at him without fluorescent lighting and printer noise between us. You realize this is insane, right? I said. He leaned back against the wall, hands in his pockets, trying to look composed. Yeah, he said, but it's the good kind. I snorted. You basically infiltrated my dating life. I matched with you. That's not infiltration. You matched with me while standing 10 feet away. He couldn't stop smiling. That smile was new. Or maybe I'd just never given myself the chance to notice it before. It wasn't arrogant. It wasn't flashy. It was restrained, like he wasn't used to letting it fully show. Dinner tomorrow? He asked. I raised an eyebrow. Confident now, huh? I already risked 2 years of silent pining and 2 weeks of undercover texting. I'm not backing out now. 2 years. Hearing it out loud did something to me. You really liked me that long? I asked quieter now. He met my eyes, and for the first time since the reveal, he didn't look playful. Yeah. No hesitation. No hedging. Why? I pressed, genuinely confused. He shrugged slightly. You're focused. You're kind when you think no one's watching. You once stayed late to help that intern fix his presentation, and you thought nobody noticed. I blinked. I noticed, he said. That made my throat tighten in a way I wasn't prepared for. Because here's the thing. I'd spent years feeling overlooked in relationships, like I was always the one giving more, always the one paying attention. And apparently the whole time someone had been paying attention to me. The elevator dinged. Ground floor. We stepped out into the cool night air, the city buzzing softly around us. So, I said, shoving my hands into my jacket pockets. No more mystery identity? He shook his head. No more hiding. Can I finally see your full profile? He laughed. You've seen it. No. I've seen the curated, Mysterious, artsy version. Okay, fair. There was a pause. A charged one. Can I ask you something? He said. Depends. Did you mean what you said? About probably saying no 2 years ago. I didn't dodge it. Yeah. He nodded slowly, absorbing that without flinching. And now? He asked. Now I feel stupid. He frowned slightly. Why? Because I never looked close enough. I hated admitting that, but it was true. Jose had always blended into my routine. Safe, familiar, and I'd mistaken familiarity for lack of spark. But the spark was there. It had just been quiet. I didn't want to be convenient, he said softly. I wanted to be chosen. That line landed hard. Not convenient, chosen. And suddenly, I realized something uncomfortable. I'd been chasing intensity for years. Big personalities, big gestures, big chemistry, but none of it ever lasted. What Jose offered was different. It was steady, intentional, observant. It felt like something that could actually grow. Hey, I said. Yeah, you're not convenient. His jaw tightened slightly, like he didn't fully believe me yet. You're terrifying, I added. That caught him off guard. Terrifying? Yeah, because this is real. There's no fantasy version of you. You're here, right in front of me. No filters, no curated angles, no mystery, just him. You can still back out, he said quietly. That surprised me. Why would I? Because once we do this, it's not just an app thing. It's not just texts. We work together. We see each other every day. If it goes badly, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. It would be messy. But here's the truth I hadn't said out loud yet. It didn't feel like it would go badly. It felt like something I'd been too distracted to notice. I'm not backing out, I said firmly. His shoulders relaxed again, just like in the office. God, I loved that I could see his reactions now. Okay, he said almost to himself. Okay. Tomorrow, I continued. But not that coffee place. He smirked. Why not? Because I don't want our first real date to happen somewhere you've been secretly observing me for years. He laughed, full and unrestrained this time, and I swear to God, hearing it in open air, not through a voice note, did something dangerous to my chest. Fair, he said. There's a little Italian place 3 blocks over. Quiet. No one from work goes there. You've thought about this. For a while. Of course he had. We stood there a second longer than necessary. Then he did something small, almost hesitant. He reached out and brushed his fingers lightly against my wrist. Not grabbing. Not claiming. Just checking. See you tomorrow, Brooks. The way he said my name without a screen between us? Yeah. That's when I realized this wasn't just a cute twist. This was the beginning of something that could actually change my life. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't chasing mystery. I was choosing the guy who'd been quietly choosing me all along. I barely slept that night. Not because I was anxious, because I couldn't stop replaying everything. Jose standing by the printer. Jose saying, I wanted you to see me. Jose asking me out like it actually mattered if I said yes. It had been a long time since I'd felt that kind of anticipation. The next morning at work was weird. Not awkward, just charged. I walked in expecting some dramatic shift in energy. Instead, everything looked the same. Same desks, same glass walls, same burnt coffee smell. Jose was already there. He glanced up when I came in, and for half a second we just held each other's gaze. No smirk, no wave, just recognition. And then, because we're adults who apparently know how to behave, he gave me a small nod and went back to his screen. My chest tightened, because this was different than the app version. The app version of Jose would have sent me a good morning text with a dumb coffee emoji. Real-life Jose respected the space. That somehow made it more intense. Around noon, he walked over to my desk. Casual. Professional. Do you have the updated numbers for the Q3 deck? I blinked up at him. Yeah, I'll send them over. Thanks. He lingered a second too long. I could feel it. The awareness. The shift. And then, under his breath, quiet enough that no one else would hear. 7:30. My stomach flipped. 7:30, I repeated. And just like that, he walked away. God, I hadn't realized how much proximity changes everything. By the time evening rolled around, I changed outfits 3 times. Not because I wanted to impress him. Okay, maybe a little. But mostly because I was suddenly hyper-aware that this wasn't some abstract online connection anymore. He already knew how I looked when I was tired, when I was stressed, when I hadn't shaved. This wasn't about first impressions. This was about intention. I settled on something simple. Dark jeans, fitted black shirt, clean but not trying too hard. When I stepped outside my building at 7:25, he was already there, leaning casually against the brick wall, hands in his pockets. And when he saw me, that look on his face, it wasn't hunger, it wasn't smugness, it was relief, like I'd actually shown up. "You're early," I said. "So are you." We stood there for a second, both pretending we weren't very aware of the fact that this was the first time we were meeting as something more than coworkers. "Hi," he said finally. "Hi." There was a beat. Then he stepped closer, hesitated, then pulled me into a hug. Not a side hug, not a quick polite one, a real one. His arms around me, warm, firm, and I felt it immediately, the difference between digital chemistry and physical presence. This wasn't imagined anymore. He smelled like clean soap and something faintly woodsy. He pulled back first, just slightly. "Still terrifying?" he asked quietly. "Yeah," I admitted, "but in a good way." He smiled at that, and we walked to the restaurant. Dinner was easy, almost suspiciously easy. No forced flirting. No trying to impress each other with exaggerated stories. We already knew the basics, so we went deeper. "Why didn't you date anyone from work before?" he asked at one point. "I didn't want drama," I said honestly. "I've had enough of that outside the office." He nodded. "Same." "You?" I asked. He shrugged. "I didn't want to risk it." "Risk what?" "You." That word again. Chosen. Risk. Intentional. He wasn't playing this lightly. "And the app made it less risky?" I asked. He gave me a small, self-aware smile. "It gave me a chance to see if you were even open to someone like me." That phrase made me pause. "Someone like you?" "Quieter," he said. "Not flashy. Not the obvious choice." I leaned back slightly, studying him. "Do you think I only go for obvious choices?" He didn't answer immediately. "I think," he said carefully, "you're used to people coming at you hard. Big energy. Big personality." I didn't know if steady would even register. That was painfully accurate. I dated loud, charismatic, confident, and every time it had burned fast and died faster. Jose wasn't loud. "You registered," I said quietly. His jaw tightened slightly. "Yeah?" he asked. "Yeah." The air between us shifted again. He reached across the table, slow enough that I could pull away if I wanted to. I didn't. His fingers brushed against mine. Not grabbing, just resting there. That simple contact sent a slow, heavy heat through my chest. Because it wasn't rushed. It wasn't about proving something. It was about being here. Together. "I've wanted to do that for a while," he admitted softly. "Hold my hand." When we left the restaurant, the night air felt cooler. Quieter. We walked side by side down the street. I slipped my hand into his. He stilled for half a second. Then his fingers tightened gently around mine. I chose him. He chose me. No mystery. No hiding. Just 2 guys who'd been in the same room for years and finally decided to actually look at each other. When we reached my building, we stopped. There it was. The moment. He looked at me like he was asking a question without words. "You don't have to rush anything," he said quietly. "I know." And that right there, that's when I knew this was different. He wasn't trying to escalate. He wasn't trying to win. He was giving me space. "Jose," I said softly. "Yeah." "You were wrong about one thing." His brows furrowed slightly. "What?" "If you'd asked me 2 years ago." I paused. "I might have said no." His jaw tightened slightly. "But if you'd asked me twice?" He blinked. I probably would have looked closer. And then, before I could overthink it, when we finally pulled back, it wasn't because one of us panicked. It was because we both needed air. He rested his forehead against mine. Okay, he murmured softly. I huffed a quiet laugh. Okay, what? That was worth 2 years. My stomach flipped. 2 years is a long time to wait for a kiss. He looked at me then. Really looked at me. I wasn't waiting for a kiss, he said quietly. I was waiting for you to want it. That hit me harder than anything else he'd said so far. Hadn't cornered me. Hadn't made weird comments at work. He'd let me move at my own pace, even if that meant pretending not to care. You really never gave up? I asked. He smiled faintly. There were moments. Like what? When you dated that guy from the finance team. I groaned. Don't remind me. He used to sit in your chair and spin in it while waiting for you to pack up. I stared at him. You noticed that? I notice a lot. Apparently. Why didn't you ever try harder? I asked. He took a second before answering. Because I didn't want to be the backup option, he said simply. If you chose me, I wanted it to be because you saw me, not because I was just there. God, he had no idea how attractive that mindset was. We stood there another second, the city humming quietly around us. So, he said carefully, does this mean I can text you good night without pretending to be mysterious? I laughed. You absolutely cannot pretend to be mysterious anymore. I'll see you tomorrow, he said. At work. And maybe after. That subtle confidence again. Not pushy, just steady. I'd like that, I admitted. And I meant it. The next week was different. Not dramatic. Not messy. Just aware. We didn't broadcast anything at the office. No hand-holding between desks. No flirting over Slack. But the quiet moments, they multiplied. The brush of fingers when passing documents. The way he'd look up the second I laughed across the room. The small, almost private smiles when our eyes met during meetings. It felt like being in on a secret, but not the shameful kind. The chosen kind. One night, about a week after our first date, he came over to my place. Nothing dramatic planned. Just takeout and a movie. Halfway through the movie, I realized I hadn't paid attention to a single scene. That charged stillness. Can I ask you something? He said. Yeah. When did it change for you? I knew what he meant. When did you start seeing me? I thought about it. The printer moment. The reveal. The office confrontation. But that wasn't it. It changed when you said you wanted to be chosen, I admitted. He finally turned to look at me. Why? Because I've been in relationships where I was convenient, I said honestly. I was the easy one, the steady one, and they still chased chaos. His expression softened. And you didn't want to be that for me, I continued. You wanted to matter. I do want to matter, he said quietly. You do. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy in a good way. I shifted, turning fully toward him. Jose, I said softly. Yeah. I don't want this to be some office fling. His jaw flexed slightly. Me neither. I'm serious. So am I. You're still terrifying, I whispered. Why? Because this feels real. It is. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't chasing someone who might disappear. I wasn't decoding mixed signals. I wasn't wondering where I stood. And now, I was finally deciding back. There's a moment when something stops feeling like a possibility and starts feeling like a direction. For me, that moment happened on an ordinary Wednesday. The sun was out, people were passing by, cars humming in the distance, normal life moving around us. And he was telling me about his mom. She still calls me every Sunday, he said, smiling faintly. Even if I text her during the week. That's cute, I said. It's excessive. It's love. He glanced at me sideways. Yeah, he admitted. We ate in silence for a minute, comfortable, watching a group of interns laughing too loudly near the parking lot. You've changed, he said suddenly. I looked over. Since when? Since that night outside your building. How? You look at me differently. I didn't even try to deny it. Because I see you differently. that seemed to land somewhere deep in him. He nodded slowly, poking at his food. I was worried it would feel weird, he admitted. Going from coworkers to this. Does it? He shook his head. No, he said quietly. It feels like we skipped the awkward stranger phase. I laughed. That's because you already knew all my embarrassing stories. True. And you still stuck around. He gave me that look again, the one that felt warm and steady at the same time. I wasn't going anywhere. God, that certainty. I still wasn't fully used to it. That night we went for a walk. No destination, just moving. It had become our thing. Late evening walks where conversation wandered as much as we did. At one point, we ended up at the small park a few blocks from my apartment. Empty except for a couple walking a dog in the distance. We sat on a bench, shoulders touching. Can I tell you something slightly embarrassing? He asked. Always. I used to imagine what it would be like to sit next to you like this. I smiled faintly. You're really committed to making me feel guilty about ignoring you. He laughed softly. I'm not trying to guilt you. Then why tell me? He thought about that. Because it feels surreal that it's real now. That word again. Real. I leaned back, looking up at the sky. You know what's weird? I said. What? I don't feel like I started liking you recently. He turned toward me slightly. It feels like I just caught up. His expression softened in a way that made my chest ache. That makes sense, he said quietly. A breeze moved through the trees above us, leaves rustling softly. You want to know something else? I said. Yeah. I think I trusted you before I realized I liked you. That got his full attention. How so? You never pushed, I said. Even after the reveal. Even after we kissed. You always gave me space to step forward. He didn't answer right away. I didn't want to win you, he said finally. I wanted you to walk toward me. That line settled into the space between us like something important. I turned slightly, facing him more fully. And now? I asked. His eyes met mine. Now I feel like we're walking toward each other. That was it. That was the feeling. Not chasing. Not waiting. Meeting in the middle. I rested my head lightly on his shoulder. He stilled for half a second, that tiny flicker of surprise he still had whenever I initiated something, then relaxed into it. His hand found mine, fingers threading together naturally now. No hesitation, no question, just familiarity growing in real time. You know, he murmured. This is better than anything I imagined. I smiled against his shoulder. What did you imagine? He chuckled quietly. Honestly? Something messier. More dramatic. More confusion. Sorry to disappoint. I'm not disappointed. His thumb traced small circles over my hand. I think the quiet parts are my favorite. Mine too. We sat there for a while, not talking. Just existing. And that's when it hit me, the realization that had been building for weeks. I wasn't excited because this was new. I was excited because it felt safe to keep going. That was unfamiliar territory for me. New connections had always felt like fireworks. Jose felt like gravity. Steady. Pulling. Inevitable. Eventually, I lifted my head. What? He asked softly. I'm glad it was you, I said. His brows pulled together slightly. On the app, I clarified. I'm glad it was you who matched with me. His expression shifted into something deeper than happiness. Me too, he said. Then, after a small pause, I almost didn't swipe. My eyes widened. What? I thought you'd ignore it. I laughed softly. Imagine that. He smiled, but there was something thoughtful behind it. It's funny, he said. We both almost missed this. That truth settled between us. So many small variables. A different swipe. A different night. A different decision. And none of this would exist. I squeezed his hand. But we didn't, I said. He squeezed back. No, he agreed. We didn't. And as we sat there, fingers intertwined, city lights flickering around us, I realized something that felt quietly profound. Sometimes your perfect match isn't someone new who crashes into your life. Sometimes it's the person who's been patiently standing in the background, waiting for you to finally look up. About a month after our first real date, something small happened that made everything click into place. It wasn't dramatic. No grand confession. No big public moment. It was a Friday night at the office. We'd both stayed late finishing a deadline. The building was mostly empty, lights dimmed in sections, that familiar end-of-week quiet settling in. 2 months ago, we would have worked in silence, headphones in, separate worlds. Now, we were sitting side by side at my desk, sharing a playlist quietly through one speaker, reviewing slides together. At one point, I leaned back in my chair and just watched him. The way he focused, the slight crease between his brows, the way he bit the inside of his cheek when concentrating. God, how did I miss this for 2 years? You're staring, he said without looking up. I know. He glanced over. That tiny smile. You gonna tell me why? He asked. I shrugged slightly. Just thinking. Dangerous. About how close I came to never seeing you. He paused. Actually paused. Then he closed his laptop slowly. That thought used to keep me up at night, he admitted. What did? The idea that I'd just always be background noise to you. That hurt more than I expected. You were never background noise, I said. He gave me a look like he didn't fully buy it. I just wasn't ready, I added. For what? For something steady. The word hung there. He didn't flinch this time. I used to think steady was code for boring, I admitted. Like if it wasn't chaotic, it wasn't real. And now, I leaned forward slightly, elbows on my knees. Now I think steady is brave. He blinked. Brave? Yeah. It takes more guts to show up consistently than it does to make a dramatic entrance. He held my gaze. You're showing up, he said quietly. So are you. The silence that followed felt full, comfortable, earned. A few minutes later, we packed up and headed out together. When we stepped into the elevator, he reached for my hand without hesitation this time. Not secretively, not cautiously, just naturally. And I realized something in that small motion. We weren't hiding anymore. Not at work. Not from friends. Not from ourselves. People had started noticing, of course. The subtle shift. The way we left together. The way our conversations carried a different weight. And for once, I didn't care, because this didn't feel fragile. Felt built. A week later, we had dinner with a few coworkers. Nothing formal. Just drinks and food after a long day. At some point, someone joked, "You two seem closer lately." Jose glanced at me. I didn't hesitate. "Yeah," I said calmly. "We're together." Simple. No over-explaining. No dramatic reveal. Just truth. And the world didn't explode. No awkward tension. Just a few raised eyebrows and a casual about time. On the walk home that night, Jose squeezed my hand. "That meant a lot," he said quietly. "What did? You saying it like that, so easily." I shrugged, smiling slightly. "I'm done pretending I don't care. You care about me?" he asked, teasing but not really. I stepped closer. "Yeah," I said. "I really do." He searched my face like he was making sure this wasn't some fleeting phase. And then he smiled in that slow, relieved way that always made my chest tighten. "Good," he said softly. "Because I've cared about you for a long time." There it was. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just solid. The funny thing is, nothing about Jose changed. He was still quiet. Still steady. Still observant. What changed was me. I started noticing the way he instinctively moved closer to shield me from passing bikes on the sidewalk. The way he'd text, "Eat yet?" on long days. The way he'd look at me like I was something he'd chosen carefully. Weeks turned into months. And the more time we spent together, the more I understood something I'd completely missed before. The reason he felt like my perfect match wasn't because he was mysterious. It wasn't because of the app. It wasn't even because he'd secretly admired me for years. It was because he knew me before I knew him back. He saw the quiet parts, the guarded parts, the parts one didn't advertise. And he stayed. One night, curled up on his couch after a long day, I looked at him and said something I hadn't planned. You know what the craziest part is? What? You were my perfect match the whole time. He smiled faintly. Took you long enough. I laughed, leaning in to kiss him. Yeah, I admitted. It did. And as he pulled me closer, steady and sure, I realized something that still humbles me. Sometimes the love you're looking for isn't hiding. It's just waiting for you to stop chasing noise long enough to notice the quiet. And the guy I ignored for years? He didn't disappear. He didn't give up. He just waited for me to look up. And when I finally did, he was